Hello, welcome back. We have definitely been educated today by so many individuals with LinkedIn Learning, Adobe, IBM, and now with Microsoft with Lincoln. And Lincoln joins us today as a results-driven education technology leader, and he's determined to provide excellent education that all students deserve. He's passionate about creating collaborative and executing initiatives that improve student learning outcomes, especially those around collaboration and accessibility. He's motivated by the complex challenge of scaling solutions that prepare students for the 21st century, predominantly those related to underserved populations. He's a strong believer in building empowering teams through capacity building, with a track record of developing strategic relationships externally and internally. So Lincoln, thank you so much for joining us once again. We're thrilled to have you here, and the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And Sherry, just time check. Okay to kind of go here for at least 45 minutes with a little flex time for conversation. Okay.
Yes.
That's how I understood the assignment, and as the kids say, let's full send it. So as Sherry said, those are some really nice words about myself. I consider myself first and foremost a teacher, and an educator and capacity builder of people, teams, and organizations. Been lucky enough to actually be a classroom teacher, and then move into a couple different roles throughout my education technology career. Have been an entrepreneur, like many of you, have worked in K-12 and university settings, and have been with Microsoft for a few years, kind of riding the rocket ship around generative AI. So what I'm super excited about for the next 25, 35, 45 minutes is empowering you all with a little bit of content and context knowledge, and then move into a live demonstration of what you could use today. So both maybe some moonshot ideas, but also some practical things for you to bring into your organizations and your teams, whether you're directly with U of L or a spinoff of U of L or a community member somehow connected to the great Center for Digital Transformation. So I have about 20 minutes of content to give you some background knowledge of what Microsoft is doing in this space, the excitement and the cautious optimism that we have around generative AI, and just how it can help organizations, big, small, and in between. And then some specific examples that I was been playing around with today. So hopefully in live production it'll work. And then lastly, just open up the floor for at least a little bit of time, and we can always talk after around like how generative AI and Microsoft at large can support your organization. So I'll make a few self-deprecating jokes along the way to hopefully let you understand this is fun, and if you're laughing, you feel safe, and you feel safe, you can learn. So it all starts with a smile. So I pulled kind of back the layers a little bit on what AI can do within education, super applicable to entrepreneurship as well. And I think my demo part of the conversation will be really about entrepreneurship, less about education. But I start first with education in most things. So just in the next, 15, 18 minutes, we'll go through high level impact of AI in education, early results. Microsoft has been in this game for about 30 years, but the last 3 months have seemed like another 30 years in terms of the democratization of these tools, the value into education, and, a small step away to that to small, medium businesses and entrepreneurship space, responsibility. Super important as you all are along your journey, whether you're a U of L employee dealing with proprietary data, or you have data that needs to follow regulation, HIPAA, FERPA, whatever. Just some ground rules around how you might want to think, as an owner of a business, as a responsible member for an organization, or even your own personal data. Really, really important during this time of change, that we're all aware of the guardrails, and in the end it's your decision to make. But I think there's some standards coming into place that I applaud and can't come soon enough. So problems we have in education, right? So whether you're, teaching PhD program or a mentor or guiding someone through a master's program, teaching an undergraduate, or your pre-K educator, there's spots all along the spectrum where AI is going to support this superhuman labor-intensive process that we call education today. So 53% of skills performed by humans, 45% of those do the research could be augmented by AI. So in no way, shape, or form is AI replacing anyone, but supporting you, augmenting you, giving you kind of this, what I call the AI intern, the AI assistant along your way, whether you're asking that intern or the AI assistant to do your social media, the AI assistant to write the first draft for you, the AI assistant to do the first swing at grading a bunch of papers or what have you, just being able to offload those mundane, kind of laborious, maybe not the favorite part of our day tasks, so you have more time to do the personal things, whether that's more FaceTime or um, more eye contact with those you're speaking with, whether that is more time to do deep thinking, whether that's more time to do more strategic thinking, what have you. So really exciting area there. The second thing is just the monetary piece to it. Early results, and this is super exciting, especially for those of you that look at a budget or P&L at any point, of the return on investment on AI. So far, the research says is about 3x. So for every dollar you're investing into AI, you're getting over $3 in return, and that's super exciting. With budgets being razor thin, you know, whether that's a university, whether that's an academic medical center, whether that is maybe especially a startup, just anything you can do to give your budget a little breathing room is something you want to do all the time. And then thirdly, the third pillar of how it might transform education is just people are hungry for it. We know people are out there trying to gain edges, trying to save time. I think the research that I'm seeing in communities of faculty members in particular that I'm in contact with through my role at Microsoft is actually saying they're using the extra time to develop new skills, spin up new projects, and have more time for themselves. So it's really the third thing is kind of the most surprising thing is like with this additional time that we're saving, what are you doing with it? And some people are like, I'm doing more work, and some people are I'm trying new things. And there's a large cohort of people that would respond to that question with I have more time to walk my kid to school, or I have more time on the weekend not to be working. And I think that's really surprising and one of the data points we're constantly exploring. So, Microsoft, this is a little bit about us and less so about necessarily any other organization, but really like thinking of what is the middle of the bullseye, and that's equitable education. It's equal opportunities that are done securely at scale and inclusively designed. And building out from that, AI is just building out from what we can do with that North Star is how do we accelerate learning? How do we improve efficiencies? How do we prepare students for the future and keep on building this out? Is these use cases that we're eventually seeing. I think my counterpart in LinkedIn, Alyssa, kicked off today's call this morning about engaging learning, personalizing it, making it more accessible, more personal, and this idea of how do we democratize these fantastic, just mind-bending, air-bending tools and bring it into your end user's hands so they can be empowered to do whatever the task that they want to get done. And it's not just things that we see from I don't know the early adopters from Twitter and YouTube and Silicon Valley. We're seeing impact across universities and university communities today already. So building out, more or less locally there. I guess the Midwest is loosely defined in my book, being here in Minnesota, but loosely defined in the Midwest as the University of Michigan, being able to build AI bots on top of Microsoft's tools to empower their community. Anthology, one of the largest learning management systems in the world, especially in North America. Being able to streamline course content and just do a bunch of other great stuff. Internationally, thinking of helping staff search and brainstorm, be more effective, and then in the California state system, personalizing student engagement. All these things are more or less education focused, but if you take, whatever whatever you're trying to do with your startup idea or in just the spirit of entrepreneurship. These are all just like one step removed from what impact it is. And I'm just super excited that those organizations, none of them are small, right? They're tens of thousands of employees in those communities, and they're deploying it at scale in a safe and secure way. And we have the same hope at University of Louisville as well, and U of L Health. So enabling AI transformation, there's a bunch to this. I'm going to keep it pretty high level today, but whether you're building applications, whether you're trying to service end users better, whether you're trying to, um, you know, have a platform that has AI within it internally, kind of in the back office, or externally, more customer facing. There's a tool for you and a stack, but that's all dependent on what exactly use cases is. So I'm gonna kind of keep it very much about something we probably all have in common here is within education, but to enhance learning, to boost productivity, and then eventually build a little bit of your own Copilot. I know I'm breezing through this. I'm guessing there's some people out there like, well, Lincoln, this is a lot of content. Totally agree with you, but I'm just trying to keep myself so I get to some demos and some practical applications for you to walk away with. And within this, we're going to just focus on something we might all understand. So in addition to just being AI services, really understanding this from this brief video where we can build it into, Teams for Education, for example, and what might lift in kind of a hyperbolic way, lift the burden on our educators. And I'm going to hopefully share this video and the audio, but I'll just let it play through. It's about 90 seconds long. So just super short example there of what, oh, hopefully that's gonna get through, of what AI can do for like one teacher and one application, right? And the reason I presented that one and out of all the options we could show was just some very small but like nuanced things, like being able to offload the grading burden on an educator. That example, I think of more of like a high school science teacher, but as a former high school teacher, I can see myself in there, Sunday night or Friday afternoon with just a stack of papers and being able to say like, hey, AI, take the first swing at this stack of papers, give some initial feedback for all my students. And, with that extra hour, or in my reality, 2 or 3 hours of grading, I'm able to do things that are more student centric or focusing on the equity gap that was in my classroom, and really focus on those things that help some of those students where I would otherwise have to spend that time grading papers or doing specific thing, creating assignments, all that stuff. Just that first draft, that kind of mundane burden of all those things of being able to offload it. And so Microsoft is a big place. You see our friends at LinkedIn in the center of this image, but really how we're building and thinking about this is every application that you touch should have an AI component to it. And that AI component to it should either be a co-pilot with you along the side of what you're doing. So you can kind of tell it as your AI assistant, hey, summarize this page. Hey, analyze this data set. Hey, create a data visualization, identify trends, what have you. Or it could be something, within deeper in the stack for those that are more technically capable and technically focused, up our developer stack as well. So it's super exciting. I'm gonna focus a little bit later just on web-based stuff because that is probably the most straightforward one of all the things. And so, yeah, I think this is good. I don't have time for it. I'll click on it because we have time for it.
Lincoln, the videos aren't, the sound is not coming through.
Oh, okay, I'll talk over it. So with this video, what's coming through, thanks for that, Sherry, is trying to highlight a couple things as it wraps up here. Is just the long list of things that AI can do wherever it exists for the end user. And part of within that space in particular is the enterprise data security. So a big thing in this space, and if you walk away with anything today, I want you to understand this, that your data needs to remain your data. And I pause for effect there because a lot of us are using AI. I've been guilty of this. I'll tell a story from a chief security officer in a second. Are using AI solutions without understanding the terms of service. And so at Microsoft, it's really important for every product that Microsoft builds, there's kind of key principles that we have to do because not only do we serve, you know, universities in the nation, we serve our armed forces, we serve the US government, we serve, you know, every company in the Fortune 500. And it's really important that we have similar pillars where your data is remaining your data. And your data is not being used to train our models, and your data follows and is used can be used with the security and compliance tools that you already own. And I think that's a huge differentiator as you're thinking about, you're like, well, okay, there's an AI for everything now. And there is. And it's kind of scary. It's kind of the Wild West right now. And I really want you all to think hard, whether you're a U of L employee or you're a U of L employee plus an entrepreneur or just straight up entrepreneur or community member here today, is really understanding like how you own your data and making sure that that doesn't go out into hands that you don't want them to be. So I had an experience this last summer. If today says the Wild West, I don't know what's more rugged, but even something more rugged than the Wild West, which was last summer with AI. And I was talking to a chief information security officer at an R1 institution somewhere in the United States. And after the meeting, he sent me a transcript and a summary of that meeting using a third-party tool, not Microsoft tool. I'm like, oh, that's super interesting. That's super cool. You know, there's new things coming out every day. So I click on the company that was hyperlinked in the email he sent me to summarize the meeting and the action steps that we had. And so I go to the website, and again, like this person's a chief information security officer, like the one that probably is most sensitive to these things. And from that website for that service that I found, that first there's this company of 4 people, so 4 people, startup company, you know, probably interesting to begin with. Second, I clicked on the terms of service, which gave me, you know, like 20 pages of kind of legal jargon, but I've deciphered from out of that they are using the data to train their model. So the data that he and I shared with each other being used to train the model, the data was going to be used, or the company held the rights to use that data to sell me advertisements. So I was taking that data and repurposing it. And then 3, if that company was purchased by a different company, it was going to be proprietary information of that future company. And that could be anyone, you know, US based or not, to have that data. And I think as we're, you know, U of L employees or we're entrepreneurship, we have a responsibility to those end users. And obviously there's just like regulation, HIPAA, FERPA, otherwise government-backed data, if you're doing research, especially research funded by the federal government, that we have to be very careful. And if you want to look up other horror stories, you know, just search the internet for reputable journalism sources, but one that came to mind is Samsung and ChatGPT over the summer. Great service, ChatGPT. In their terms of service, they are, you know, very explicit that they are using the data to train their models. And if you're putting in proprietary information into that proprietary information is being used to train their models. And so Microsoft came into the back of that, you know, kind of, you know, well-intended, but unfortunate situation, and built out Microsoft Copilot, which is for enterprise customers or large institutions like the U of L, and being able to have commercial data protection behind that. And what that allows you to do is to use that in full confidence, that the data is not being saved, that the data is encrypted at rest and in transit, and that those sessions are cached or deleted after each instance of it. So you can use it with, you know, full confidence, and however you use it. I'll show how you do that in a couple of, I don't know, about 5 or 7 minutes if I stay on schedule here. So I just want to be really clear. If anything else you learned from today is that we have to be really careful with how our data is going out there. And I'm not trying to be the boogeyman, but until there's regulation in place and we have systems, processes, within large organizations to understand it, that you kind of have to regulate yourself, because I think anyone can go out there and, swipe their credit card and sign up for these tools. And it's kind of attractive, but really if we're being responsible and fiduciary to our data of our end users, we have to be very careful where that data is going right now. So I just wanted to, public service announcement for a little bit there, but just how we're seeing all the results besides the secure and compliant piece to it is Copilot, Microsoft's version of generative AI, how it's transforming workplaces already. People are spending less time searching for information. That is, every second I can get back from searching through, I know that an email 3 months ago, or I thought I saved this document 4 years ago, and being able to spend less time do that, that's awesome. 71% of people are saving time on mundane tasks. I know personally, the amount of time I'm spending on internal meetings has decreased. I won't say how much, because I kind of might let the cat out of the bag of how many meetings I skip every week, but I have time on my calendar Friday afternoon to get caught up on internal meetings, and I'll just watch the meeting recap, which is just, you take an hour meeting. We can all say we've all been on these calls. There's probably 20 to 30 minutes of that hour meeting that are actually the content you need to watch or to learn, and be able to condense that is just this whole godsend in my world. Being able to catch up on meetings and then hours saved per week. And that's, to make this into a really like financial conversation, that's really like the return on investment. If we can save everyone an hour a week, and you times that by the number of people in your organization and the amount of compensation we're paying those people for that hour of work, those are big numbers really fast. It may seem small, it's like 15 or so minutes a day, but that adds up super fast. And one done well, I think we all have to have a sense of like really cautious optimism on what that can do for your organization, and the human-centric work we all do. So empowering everyone, kind of the last leg of this, of being whatever you're doing between, starting kind of, I don't know, 11 o'clock here in the top left, of being able to resolve more customer service problems, going over to 1 o'clock here, streamlining processes. At 3 o'clock on the clock here is coding faster, completing tasks quicker, creating workflows that allow you to speed up processes, and on a cybersecurity front, responding to threats in minutes, not hours. Like these are all just like transformational things, and Copilot empowers all of that in a very scalable way. And then lastly, I know with the entrepreneurship in here of not only having products and services that you're trying to bring to market, but also thinking of future products and services you might bring to market, of just being able to use this stack of tools and be able to either accelerate what you're doing today, or just build in a completely new way, like we have all around the country right now, of people taking the AI infrastructure stack and being like, what can I do with this new engine, right? What can I build faster that can, there's just so many things. And I am guilty, as maybe some of us are, of looking at social media way too much. But I know my social media feed is full on LinkedIn and Twitter, or X, of AI startups, and it's so cool. I'm a part of one that's super interesting. That's out there. Today it takes newspaper articles and rewrites them for the grade level of the student. So you think of a fifth grade student, or if you all have students out there or young people out there, in a fifth grade classroom, there's kids that are reading at the second grade reading level, and students that are reading at the high school level, and they happen to be best friends, and they sit next to each other. And so for that teacher, that fifth grade teacher, it's like they have, let's say, 20 kids in their classroom, ranging of students who are still learning how to read, and students that are, reading, almost college level content. And so my friend Jeff's startup idea is like taking, the New York Times, or a local publication, and it's able to, based upon that student's read level, rewrite it for that student. So, we're both looking at the same content, but it's more accessible. And just like starting there, just like one idea, right? Like one problem that an educator, and this is K-12, I know, but one educator might face, and being able to rewrite that content for personalized learning, it's just mind bending how impactful that could be. We'll see. There's probably a lot of people working on that same problem, but I think of just so many things, both in and net new potential, but also just backwards looking on security and compliance potential as well, all along of what we can do. So I'm going to skip over this a little bit to highlight some examples. But just building your own co-pilots, here's just big buckets of where we see value creators creating value is being able to take information or your data that's proprietary. Maybe it's, your student information system, maybe it's your EHR data, maybe it's proprietary research that you're the world leader on some super niche topic, and being able to chat on top of that. And so, whether, there's an example that we often use is the National Institute of Health and their guidelines for writing grants for them. In typical maybe NIH um, fashion, that document, that PDF is I think it's over 300 pages long. Like it's meant in good intention to help people write grants that are more applicable to get more NIH data and make it more accessible to more people. But with 300 pages of super dense text, it's not super helpful. So being able to, even an example there, super simple for your research team, is to create a research assistant bot and be able to take these different entities, whether it's government or nonprofit or other partners that you have in your research department, and being able to like have that data set as an assistant to those people writing those grants to make their applications more attractive, more succinct, and save them time so they can spend more time on the work. Intelligent analysis. So I think of this as someone described it to me as your AI intern who also can get an MBA. And so being able to take a data set, whether it's 100 data points long or 1 million data points long, and asking that Copilot to analyze the data, look up trends, compare year over year, even cleaning up the data, which has spent so much time in our data science process or our analytical processes, to really get to that end goal of being able to be a quote unquote data driven organization. And whether you have, your an institution as large as University of Louisville or your startup of 5 people, there's not enough time in the day to process all the data that you're creating. And I think that's true of whatever industry. I'll say personally experience. Every industry I've seen has more data than they know what to do with. And it's not the data, having enough data to get insights, it's having the insights to make sense out of the data that is the challenge. And then content generation, in the small businesses and startup communities that I've lived in, so much of it is just about being able to scale up your story. So that sales and marketing, that content creation piece to it is a highlight I'll do here in a second that I've pulled up already. And then end user facing copilots. So being able to, built in alongside your app or even within your applications or processes, of having a copilot like assistant, that's going to allow you to either like serve more customers, serve them better, serve them quicker, and take the burden off of those people that are usually doing that work, and allowing them to do higher value work, and this true AI assistant piece to it. And then one last thing, it's super important wherever you're dealing with this stuff of having AI principles. I know, from personal experience that U of L is going through these principles and trying to understand exactly, how they believe, but it's going to look something like this. We work with, I get the pleasure of working with a lot of R1 institutions in the Midwest, and everyone has these sort of principles. The exact flavor of them is important, and the nuances is interesting, but making sure you're seeing these things of fairness, responsibility, privacy and security, inclusiveness, transparency, and accountability. So that is both things that Microsoft believes in, and also things that we at Microsoft believe should be regulated. So as we see here in DC and more locally from state and local governments, just these AI related regulations coming through, we want to make sure they're done in a way that is promoting these principles, and kind of balancing that innovation, but not innovation at no expense. And so we want to make sure that progress is had, empowerment is created, but at the same time in a way that's done in a safe and responsible way. So some other things, and then I'm going to jump into the second half of the presentation here. This last third is more likely. But just two last things: building on trust, principles that we believe in. I think it's really important to understand, 1, 2, and 3. And number 4, question that comes up, especially with content creators, and faculty members are content creators and have IP of their own, of making sure our copyright commitment is applied to you as well. So if you use our products in the way that they should be done, we're going to protect you, and we're able to, put that into contractual language as part of VA and all those funds. And then last thing, this is for education, but I don't want to dismiss what it is for you all, but this kind of, I don't know, infographic that I use all the time, of thinking of how do we create use cases? Okay, Lincoln, we can do it all, but how do we do the first thing? And really think of the first thing as a thing that has both feasibility and value. So not just creating things for tech's sake, but creating things that are actually valuable to us, but at the same time are feasible. So it's probably small for those of you that are on mobile or just on a smaller screen today, but really 1 through 20 here. 1 being things that are super easy to do, lower in the scale would be things that are both of low value and low feasibility. But you want to think of things, where is the overlap in the Venn diagram of things that are both valuable and feasible? And so those are just some examples, and I'm going to switch over to my my browser that I pulled up for you all. So a couple things here. First, my screen should be shared. First thing that I'll start here. Okay, so Copilot shows up in a lot of ways, right? Copilot for, I gotta close the chat because I get a little distracted from that. Copilot comes up in a lot of ways for Microsoft. It's a bit of a joke internally. I'll share the joke with you all, is that like we have Copilot for Copilots at this point. So it's Copilot for Excel, Copilot for the web, Copilot for low code, no code stuff. I'm sure there's Copilots being built into LinkedIn, and that's great. A little confusing, but just think of Copilot as your AI assistant. And as we move from product based to persona based, you are starting to see Copilots for different jobs. So Copilot for finance, Copilot for security, Copilot for HR. And start thinking of what are the bundles of AI assistants that we have to complete that task. And so if I think of the world's hardest job, which is an entrepreneur, how do we have a Copilot for entrepreneurship? Okay, it's kind of a I don't know, redundant question, because what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? And we have to grab all that stuff. So one thing I'll start with is where a lot of us, our journey has started, with ChatGPT. Great tool, kind of introduced generative AI to a lot of people. A couple shortcomings addressed before of ChatGPT. One of them, besides, in addition to that, it costs money to get the latest versions of it. Last thing, it's only trained onto data up until like 2021 or 2022. So, if I'm able to ask some very like rhetorical question of who is the president of U of L, it's giving me outdated information, and it's acknowledging that. What's exciting about, I'll go up here, about Copilot for the web, is able to get data that is in real time. So it's ChatGPT plus the internet, which is a great data source, and a great way to think about it is, how do we take this large language model, ChatGPT, in versions of it, whether it's, there's a handful of other leading indicators out there, but these large language models, and what data do we want it to touch? One of the pieces of data that we want it to touch is the internet. So I can get, modern information, real-time insights, can do a lot of things. So I think of just starting here as just like taking what we all know in the large language model space, which is ChatGPT, broke a lot of awesome ideas and democratized it to a lot of people. Shortcomings around, data privacy, cost, also just relevant information. So being able to like move beyond that to Copilot, and being able to do a couple things. So, you could ask Copilot whatever your business is. I've done this for startups that I advise with. I'm just like, how's Copilot apply to this business, whether it's this industry, this problem, startup, what have you. One thing I picked off here is just thinking of, one thing that comes up with almost every small medium business is the lack of investment that you can make to sales and marketing. And so I took an example here from U of L News. Recent study, I guess this is 3 months ago now, but being able to take some piece of information, piece of content, which is super cool. I mean, not cool, but cool that you're doing the research, I suppose, of showing nicotine in e-cigarettes may be harmless, as some claim. Really interesting, kind of provoking article. That's great. I don't know how many people see this. It looks like 3,300 people have seen this over the last 3 months. We obviously want to get that to more people, and being able to do that through a social media channel. So you have, tens of thousands of alumni in LinkedIn is one idea I thought for U of L. Pretty low hanging fruit to take this content, repurpose this onto LinkedIn, right? To get, if you have 3,000 people here visiting the website, you might have another, 30,000 people be able to see it on LinkedIn through your alumni network, and being able to ask Copilot, be like, hey, I, have zero time to do this because I'm a startup founder, or I'm a faculty member who also has research, who also has a family, who also has personal hobbies, and I have 30 seconds to get this out to my LinkedIn members. Just asking it, super simple prompt, read this article, give me some examples. And so some examples, it can be the first draft, or for these, I would say it's pretty much the final draft if I'm writing it, and being able to say like, okay, nicotine, e-cigarettes, cardiac risk, sympathetic dominance, regulatory implications, and just some really interesting things that can get users, again, to understand a little portion of this kind of provoking research and get it back to either this website, call to action. If you're in entrepreneurship and you're trying to create transactions, being able to bring it back to the value proposition or what have you. And so this just lives, like I said before, on the right side of any website. It also lives, this is the same one, it lives, at copilot.microsoft.com. If I have access and my organization I work for has purchased Copilot for M365, I can then toggle over here and start using the data that I have through my work or through my education organization. So that's your SharePoints, your PDFs, your OneNotes, your OneDrives, and also third-party information if your organization has set it up. So we have some organizations that have connected Copilot to their Salesforce, have connected Copilot to their Jira connected Copilot to all sorts of in the cloud and on-prem databases, whether it's Oracle, AWS, GCP, what have you. And so super exciting thing that you can just connect all these places so the end user can just be this superhuman component to it. And then the last thing I was going to show before we kind of transition to conversation. Oh, this is, another example. I might take the U of L Digital Transformation Center. This is a PDF format, and be able to say, write introduction email to a new team. So we'll see how good it does in real time. Sometimes the demo gods don't always cooperate, but being able to just take a question that's not necessarily like I'd say like a summarized, kind of like a lower level thinking piece to it, and be able to think critically about what DTC is and do it in a professional way and be like, okay, that's fine. This is interesting, right? It's using a reasoning and be able to like add a little sugar on top, as I would say, to make it sound personal. Be like, that's great, but add more fun to the message. Can you add I don't know if it can add emojis, but I think emojis are fun and this should be added. Okay, so it can. So this is new to me. I'm always learning in real time that I can write emojis, but being able to match your tone and kind of the branding that you might want to do. So this is super simple, almost silly example, but being able to augment, you got a new employee coming in, let's say April 1st start or whatever, and being able to write that introduction email to them as they are welcome into your community. Maybe they're going to have some role, or you want them to have some role into the DTC, maybe not, but being able to write that first draft for you. And, maybe you want to, I don't know, change out the emojis or get rid of them, or add a sign off that's more personal to you, or make it more formal or less formal, but just being able to, be able to do that, copy and paste it, what Copilot for M365 gets you, for those that are curious and what other higher eds are moving towards, is having all this power within your Outlook as it is today. So instead of having to copy and paste it, you can just put it within your Outlook and be done with it, which is exciting. So last thing I think I have is yeah, so being able to do this. Other part I'm not going to get into because it's just mind bending but super exciting. Creating images, short form videos, being able to do all sorts of stuff. It can now create graphs. I can say, give me a graph of the unemployment rate past 8 quarters. So it's kind of a darky one, but I'm an economist at heart. So unemployment rate, being able to say like, okay, not only, and I think it's still working on it. Yeah. So being able to answer it from a kind of factual point, creates a chart for me. And then I believe, oh, it didn't make me a graph, did it? Oh, it did make me a bit of a graph. Okay, so unemployment rate. Okay, limit the response to. So being able to modify my prompt and not just boil it from the world, which is cool, but getting back to just the US is what I kind of had in mind from the beginning, but obviously the Copilot didn't know what I had in my brain how to articulate it. So wherever you're doing, wherever you are, I just want to really demystify what Copilot can do for your line of work, whether your line of work is spinning off a startup here, whether your line of work is just doing more with less, as we're all expected to do, or whether your line of work is more focused on teaching and learning aspect of U of L. So I hopefully made enough self-deprecating jokes to really empower you just to go and try these things, with the glimmer of hope in your brain of what could be done in the future, and also with the guardrails along the way, because nothing we can do can really get outside of that security and compliance framework that we all need to and should be aware of as responsible members of the community. So I'll pause here for question, comments, concerns. Try to end at 12 or at 40 after, a couple of minutes over, but pause here. Sherry, if there's anything in the chat that I should highlight right away, please summarize that for me.
Yeah, so at the moment we do not. I did want to let folks know that we do have access to Copilot at this time at U of L, but we do not have access to Microsoft 365 Copilot. So we talked to IT yesterday, and that's where we're at right now.
Awesome. Yeah, and I won't go into the whole thing. Like, there's a Copilot for everything. So I try to give you perspective without overwhelming people, because it just depends on your role, what you might be interested in.
No, no, this was not
double-edged sword
at all. And I think what the majority of individuals that are on this call will take away from this talk is the proprietary data, Lincoln, and how Microsoft is being so careful about ensuring the integrity of our researchers' work. And the citation of that, and not using it to learn from. So I really appreciate you explaining that in a manner that is digestible.
Good. And hopefully I'm not here, and it's just not my DNA to be like the boogeyman and be like, you should be super scared about it. But once the data is out there and you do lose it, it's no longer yours. And I know, like, we spent years, if not decades, building up these things and building that trust, importantly, with your end customer, whether that's other researchers, whether that's students. And so I'm kind of hyper aware of it and trying to be the one that's like, yeah, let's go do this, but let's do this and like wear our elbow pads and our helmets and sign the permission slip and make sure we're doing it in a responsible way, because there's some really cool things happening. But we have, like, in our space, in the regulated spaces that we operate, it's really important that we make sure we know what we're doing, and not slowing us down, but just making sure we're focused.
Okay, well, let's see if we have any questions. Anybody have any questions for Lincoln?
I'll tell a story because I think stories are the best of, oh, the DTC alias has their hand up. Jump in there, whoever that is. Oh,
I'm sorry. This is Elena I'm behind the scenes today. I really I'm looking forward to hearing your story. But I was also wondering if Microsoft is planning to bring maybe through LinkedIn Learning, because I've seen that there is that very cool partnership in, learning features through LinkedIn Learning. But anyway, if there is any channel that you're planning to use to learn how to make the most in the interaction with AI, because that is something that can be frustrating at the time. And just curiosity.
yeah. I mean, let's ask it. Let's use the tool to learn about the tool. Um, can do for me as a, I'll say researcher. And so we'll see how it does. But as that's thinking about it, I I do appreciate and can recognize that. I think it's almost like the overwhelming amount of information out there about here's what AI can do, and just the kind of I don't know, billboard that AI can do everything is like, okay, great, but like, can it do this one thing? And how does it relate to me? And I think that's a journey we're still trying to figure out. One thing I can say with confidence from other universities is for executive leadership to demonstrate how to use it. Like just to have them be like, here, okay, we're no longer in this organization, we're no longer taking notes. We're having the AI take notes for every meeting, and it's just like being able to say like that I'm gonna show that, I'm gonna demonstrate that. I'm also gonna show you like 3 ways of, this is the executive talking, 3 ways I use AI every day. And there's a couple developing best practices, if you will. One of the things that I see, because universities are typically really decentralized, is these leaders in different departments, whether it's biology, whether it's finance, whether it's HR, whatever department you may identify with, is having people create, it's almost like short form videos of how they're using it, and just building that up. Like we're not going to do it forever. We're going to do it for like 20 days. So like the month of April, I'm going to send one out every morning. That's going to be like a 20-second thing of how I use AI to write emails, or how I use AI to organize my life, or what have you. And so here's an example. I don't know what it came back here for researchers, 5 sources with the links, these little things in Copilot are the hyperlinks to it, being able to understand different pieces. These are for pretty serious ones, but being able to say like, okay, that's challenging. What I was really asking for. And so being really a little bit more tactical with this edited prompt here of just being able to say like information retrieval, data analysis, writing assistant, idea generation, learning resources. So one thing I think is really cool, that I've seen, or actually I'll steal this from a different researcher, was they took their previous research, and it was over 20 years. So it was like just hundreds of pages of peer-reviewed articles that were published, put them into one PDF, and then ask that PDF, what gaps do I have in my research? And just being able to like have it look at it and be like, hey, I see, you're researching the effects of nicotine on teenage brains, and here's things or questions that you haven't answered yet. And using it not just as a summarizer, a synthesizer, kind of, I don't know, kind of delegating down here to the AI assistant, the AI intern sort of mindset, but also just as like someone on your shoulder that's saying like, okay, now you know all my work. What should I do with it? Are people putting, for the authors out there, people putting in their start their first draft, or they're like, hey, I'm writing a book, I'm kind of stuck on this section, like what should I do? And having it be there alongside of you as like a companion to unstick you, unblock you into what your research might be. And my story from all this happened, I guess it was 2 weeks ago now. I was on a plane coming back from a healthcare conference called HIMSS that I'm sure there's some U of L health people at. And I was sitting next to a team from the Mayo Clinic, which is here in Minnesota, like a world known healthcare organization, and they have the woman next to me in particular was using Copilot for M365, and her role is to assist on building new hospitals to make sure they're like next generation ready, right? We're in higher ed, so we all know the buildings where there's not enough outlets, let alone like connectivity, let alone like the amount of connectivity that we want. So we always see, go into any older building, university, you're going to see students like sitting on the floor, even faculty members sitting on the floor, like elbowing out people to get the outlets. And the internet's usually not great in this places anyway. So like her job is to like fix that going forward, which is truly, really, truly a interesting job and really hard to do in a space evolving as quickly as healthcare. But she was using Copilot. She had been gone for 3 days, and she's 2 hospitals are about to break ground that she was responsible for. And she said she got caught up on 3 days of work in a 3-hour flight, just from like getting through meetings, getting through emails, summarizing, a press release that's going out announcing, the groundbreaking ceremony for this new, I think it was a radiology clinic, and just be able to not just do stuff going forward for research, but also the other jobs that we have to get to that really interesting stuff of like processing internal meetings, getting out those press releases, doing the first draft of our stuff. So that story, I was just like blown away because I had never seen someone in public, and she didn't know I worked for Microsoft. I was just kind of striking up a conversation, and she was just kind of showing me how she used it throughout her day as a really technical, but still like a project manager in the end, and being able to say like, yeah, here's how I have like these little assistants throughout my day. And I thought that was just really eye-opening to see how, if you know how to delegate, which is a skill in itself, if you're comfortable with delegating, that's the limit of this potential, is how good of a delegator we are to the different tasks throughout our day. And sometimes that's hard. And I catch myself being like, oh no, I don't need AI to write my emails, I'll write them all. But then I use it and I'm like, well, I crushed my inbox in 30 minutes instead of 3 hours. So that's something I'm never going to do again. So good question. Probably more information than you thought of or thought you were going to get, but those are just some top of mind things in this really fast moving space.
I personally really appreciated the time you took for answering like so extensively, because in my personal experience, at this point, many times, I know that people are using AI, Copilot, or other AI in different capacities, but I have noticed that sometimes there is a little bit of shame in that, almost like, oh, I will never admit that someone, AI wrote that that email for me. I am absolutely on the other spectrum of this, but or maybe a little concerned because some people are very, people have different ideas, different thoughts, different feelings about using AI in the everyday job. So that's why I was wondering if having neutral or people who are neutral examples, if you will, that would be very interesting. Then it's a very interesting suggestion, the one you gave, to start promoting ourselves in our reality, how to use it. It's something we're leading by example. It's always a good idea.
Well, I'll tell another story, and this is like more personal and it's in healthcare and not higher ed specifically, but I have a close friend who is like lead communications person for like, I don't know, maybe like a hospital system that has like 20,000 employees, like a fairly large hospital system. And one of her roles is to kind of be the voice of the CEO. So writing his speeches, writing the social media, crisis communications, like all those sort of things. And she was like, I use it. Like, so like indirectly he's using it because I use it to produce all the first drafts of my content. Like he gave this speech 2 weeks ago, let me rewrite it, copy paste, whatever, and then edit it from there. And I would say like the shame piece to it, I think there is, if you're just passing off AI as your work, I think there is a little healthy, maybe we should rethink our approach to it. But as long as there's a human in the loop in this, I think that is something that's just empowering more users to what the most powerful people in our organizations already have access to. They already have, typically executive assistants, they already have a team that's doing kind of the first draft of these ideas for them. And like now this is just available to everyone. And it's like, that's the really powerful thing, is like it's available to everyone. And it's, if not free, it's pretty close to free, and saving us time, giving us, our lives back, getting rid of some digital debt we all have in our lives, and whether you use that extra time to do more work, to, adopt a new hobby, or just, spend more times walking your dog, all the power to you. But I think that's just overall a net positive for ourselves, if we can do this appropriately and safely, to get our jobs done faster. I really was planning on dismissing early for good behavior, but I feel like I'm running us to the very end of my allowed time.
You're good. You're good, Lincoln. This was very helpful information. I was pausing for just a moment to see if anyone was wanting to ask any more questions about Copilot.
And I think a cool thing, I don't know, I was just calling the chat throughout the day. I was here to kick off. Sherry, I think you recognized my emoji in the beginning.
Yes.
All this majority, not everything, but a lot of the things that you're seeing coming out from, places like Coursera, obviously LinkedIn being a Microsoft company, so many other apps that I'm out there. I'm like, oh, this thing has AI now. And I look into it, it's all built on the same Microsoft stack of tools, which is cool. But I want to demystify the fact that like these are like, hundreds of people, thousands of hours projects. So many of them are just like over a long weekend hackathon that are getting the first editions out there. And like Sherry or someone in the chat said before, it's like, it's all about like the data. You already have the data. It's just plugging these tools into that data to make it more useful and get more utility out of the information you already have, which is exciting, and hopefully, makes you think twice before you, buy that AI for tying your shoes or whatever the latest iteration out there. Don't let them fool you. You can go build that yourself, and I'll take it. If we had more time, I'll show you a demo of just like taking your website, copy pasting your website link, and then like that's your AI bot. That's like version 1 of it. Is so simple, and it doesn't get too much more complicated after that.
Right. Thank you, Lincoln. And this is a great segue into our wrap up, I believe. I can't thank you enough for being here, sharing this, for Microsoft being such a wonderful partner to the University of Louisville, and your willingness to come and share your knowledge as we move forward.